Hey everyone, I'm Paul Greenberg and welcome to Talking Headless. I think this is episode 17. Don't hold me to that. I lose track really easily once you hit 74 years old. In fact, probably losing track of that too. So we have a really good show today, like really, really good. Okay. And we're taking kind of a slightly different tack in each of the different segments, the analyst relations segment that we open with, and then the analyst segment later. But before I get into that, I want to just do a little housekeeping. For those of you who know that Brent Leary and I are celebrating the 15th anniversary of CRM Players, the original date for our conference, live conference celebrating that was November 11th and 12th. The conference is called IRL 2024. Well, it's now January 20th and 21st. It's called IRL 2025. And typical of Brent and me, we're celebrating the 15th anniversary of CRM Players on its 16th anniversary, right? So what can I tell you? I mean, it's who and what we are. So let me tell you a little bit about today's show, okay? There are big companies out there, like really big companies. In fact, ServiceNow, one of my favorites, is what I still call the world's largest unicorn. This is a company that's multi-billion dollars in revenue. It's got tens and tens of thousands of employees, and I'm not sure the exact count, but let's just say more than I can count on multiple uses of both hands. And it's evolving rapidly. Now, if you think about this, when you hear publicly about a company like ServiceNow, what you hear is, oh, okay, we're now a company that does this. At one point, it was platform of platforms. Another point, it's an AI-driven company. Another point, and by the way, this is nothing, it's not an all over the map thing. It's actually evolutionary. It's a company that at one point had a really, really strong, in fact, a primary product was ITSM. Then it added a major piece to its portfolio called at the time customer service management, which is now, by the way, I believe, largest revenue maker for the company, but can't say that for sure, but I'm pretty close to sure. But so in other words, you're dealing with an organization that is changing and constantly evolving. And you have analyst relations at companies like this. And, there are other companies, obviously, who fit that same profile, other than the world's largest unicorn. And they are also in the midst of this change. But the question when you come to analyst relations is, how in hell do they handle that? I mean, if they had one like straight line to work with, it would be easy. You find the analysts who cover that one line. You go straight down the middle. Oh, and look at that. There's a whole group of them who are literally on the sidelines there, commenting all over the place, and you kind of gather them up in your hands. But not when it constantly changes. Well, I have the honor of hosting today Elissa Houchin Seweryniak, and who is the jefe for analyst relations at ServiceNow. This Elissa, awesome. Okay. I've known her a while now. I've met ServiceNow 7-8 years. I've known her almost that entire time. In fact, that pretty close to that entire time. And she's not only really good at handling everything I just was talking to you about, she's hired a great team that works with her. And again, that's her responsibility to figure out who these people are. She's understood it from the standpoint of both cultural fit, the standpoint of quick lightning fast, their ability to actually interact with analysts and others, and she is a phenomenal just human being. I recently had lunch with her and a couple of other AR people from ServiceNow at one of my favorite restaurants, actually. And like always, it's always like a wonderful and delightful thing to have a chat with Elissa and, of course, the other people. I did find out something interesting about Elissa's family in the course of this, though. Her husband actually owns a distillery, and it produces a bourbon with a, let's say, incredibly tasty bourbon with a real kick. And here it is, by the way. Let's see if I can get that focus. There we go. Three Keys Distillery, right? This is wonderful. Okay, it's a you have to be prepared that because it's a cask strength bourbon for a big kick in the finish, especially. But it's an absolutely rich, flavorful bourbon, and this is her husband. So, given that I love bourbon, let's say that's a nice side benefit for me personally, but the big benefit for all of you guys is what you're going to hear Elissa and I talk about and what Elissa's got to say. So let's bring on my friend Elissa.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, how you doing, Elissa?
I'm over here blushing. Like, what an amazing intro. Thank you so much. And I feel the same about you and working with you, Paul. You've just been such a great partner and advisor to us on all things business and otherwise here at ServiceNow and for me personally. So thrilled to be here.
Well, so let's get into this because I
Sure.
think your job is insanely hard, like insanely hard. Because look, I have watched ServiceNow, especially since Bill McDermott became CEO, evolve, but evolve at an enormously fast rate. And interestingly enough, this isn't evolve, revert, pivot, 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 pivot. It's evolution, 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 evolution. But while it's evolving kind of this way, it's also evolving this way. So, so for example, when I first came around you guys, you were just developing what's now called customer workflows, right? And what was then CSM. Shortly thereafter, I had conversations with some of your folks about your industries, and you had like three that you were holding on to, and you were holding on to them. You didn't even want to do more at the time. Now I don't know the number, but it's a lot, right? And you also moved to become from a strong customer service ops company to a more on the customer service side, a more driven CX driven customer service ops company, and at the same time, you've broadened into this whole platform of platforms kind of approach to what you do. I know it's not your messaging anymore, but it's still what you do. So you're the head of AR. You've got a group of analysts who are ITSM back in the day, and all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute, there's a lot more people like me, for example, and others who you now have to figure out not only how to contact us, but first of all, who the hell we are, and then why you should contact us, and then how you're going to handle it, and then get a budget, and then somebody's going to throw 5 more industries at you. I mean, how do you handle it? What's your approach? What's the process? How does this work?
Sure. Well, it's definitely a process. There's not, I think, one answer for one market or only one way to do it. For sure, it starts with what you already mentioned, a great team and hiring great people in, like Jeff McDonald, who had expertise in HR and CSM, and Christine Randall, who you were close to me with, right, who had expertise. So they're bringing in a knowledge of the analysts in those markets. But for me, I think one of the big things when I came to ServiceNow, first of all, when I started, there were 5,000 employees, and now we're at 25,000 in 7 years. I mean, it's just mind-bending growth and change. But we were sort of doing, when I first started here, we're making an announcement, show up. We made this announcement. What do hey, analysts, you should know about it. We reversed that to say, no, we're going to spend the majority of our time talking 12 to 18 months out, and really putting it all out there in advisory and more inquiry-based engagement. So it was constant feedback, insight. This is what we're thinking. So as we make those pivots, as we change and evolve, for the analysts, they're feeling like they're getting a lot of view behind the curtain, if you will, and it doesn't feel so abrupt maybe to them because they've been part of the conversation. And one of the things I love about the ServiceNow platform is the team can innovate so quickly. So we have so many examples of analysts who have said, "Oh, have you thought about this feature or that product or even this application?" I give full credit to the analyst community that we got into the risk business. We were dabbling, not sure, and the analyst community saw the value in that in a single platform. And now it's a hugely successful market for us. So we can act quickly on the feedback, which makes it really gratifying, I think, for our team as well as for the analysts to be able to see their fingerprints on what we're doing. So I would say that's the first step, is just having a longer lens on the conversation. The other piece, I would say that we are just so blessed with customers that love to build on the ServiceNow platform, and they actually go to analysts themselves. I've had analysts way before we ever had a supply chain product to market. I had supply chain analysts calling me going, I had a customer call me and ask me if they can build this supply chain solution on the Now platform. Do you all do that? And well, we do now because our customers pulled us into that conversation, right? But the customers are so excited. They're bringing ideas forward. They're talking to other analysts saying, well, I have ServiceNow. Don't you think I should use them for strategic planning, for DevOps, for all of these other things? And it pulls us into conversations in a more organic way that is just, it's a piece of the magic that we don't take for granted and we couldn't create, having these like customers that they're so excited bringing us into the conversation. So I think it's a little bit of just awesome tech and customers, and then a lot of like, let's be as open as we can be and engaged as we can be as we all change together.
So, well, so you look at this, but then at the same time, or not then, and at the same time, you're kind of limited by whatever budget you have, right? In other words, on the one hand, budget planning time happens in September, let's say, and it ends by, I'll say October, November, meaning you know what you're going to spend money on. And then all of a sudden,
100%.
May, you shift, and there's a whole new group of people who you never even were considering that you now have to consider. How do you handle it?
Yeah, 100%. I think we've gotten pretty adept both at figuring out what are the things that we can do maybe that don't require more budget. Is there a different person who has that license? Is there another analyst that we can talk to that can sort of get us into the conversation while we're building credibility? So there's a few things you can do there. We've also made the case to the business. I mean, the great thing about ServiceNow is like when they're in, right? And we've gone, a great example this year is operations technology, OT. When we started in January, it was, the head of the business said, this is an area that, we've got controlled go-to-market. We're sort of testing and learning. Let's just get out there, have a few conversations with analysts. By May, it was a fully GA product with a full AR program. And I said, well, time out. Like we can't absorb that. I mean, it's a huge market, completely different analysts, lots of sub-markets, industries. And the leader said, well, what do you need? And we were able to get budget out of the business to build a program around that. So that's given us some flex as well. But yeah, we got to get creative sometimes. And then sometimes it's like just ruthless prioritization. And I say that with love to anyone who may feels like they were ruthlessly prioritized in some moments, but it's what we have to do. We just, our tech workflows business today is in more markets than the entire company was when I started at ServiceNow. And so we just can't treat everything equally. And we've had to make some tough choices about, where are we going to do a fulsome AR program? And then we have something that we call sort of AR light, where we set an expectation with the leader and oftentimes with the analysts as well, when we need to say, here's how we're going to engage, and it's going to be a little bit less. It's a tough call. Like it's work that's worthy, right? We talk about that internally. Like it's it's really hard to say no. Like we got into this business because of the R and the relations, right? And it's really hard to say no. But we know that if we don't sometimes do that, we're going to have a quality issue, and we can't sacrifice one priority for another just because we weren't willing to make those hard decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I see that. I mean, I know that, and so taking that a little further, because
Yeah.
one thing that's really interesting on one level is ServiceNow's culture is pretty welcoming culture, and it's actually, it's in the top group of cult. Look, you know me. I mean, I'm big on less on product and more on company
Yeah.
than anything else, and that because I'm looking overall at everything, and culture's because I'm so right brained. Culture's a big part of what I look at, and your culture is right up there toward the top, especially for a very large enterprise.
Thank you.
On the other side of it, you have, well, let's just say my brethren are can be egotistical and testy a lot sometimes. Right? And you got to deal with that, right? I mean, it's unfortunate because there's no reason for that to actually be the case. Ultimately, to me as an analyst, I'm grateful to the fact that somebody's not only willing to listen to my opinion because it's only an opinion, and sometimes they're even willing to pay for my opinion, which is astonishing, given, especially if you're a New Yorker, when you're giving it away for free, whether people want it or not, right? Right. So I, from my standpoint, how do you talk about dealing with that stuff with some people? Look, you have goodwill. I go to Knowledge, whatever year, and the analysts there, and some of them, friends of mine, but they are tested.
Yeah.
They can get that way, and or long-winded or whatever. But they still, their regard for you is very high, right? And you have that. I'd say Zoho has that, and maybe one or two other companies. Salesforce kind of has that sometimes. I mean, it's a mix, but the regard, especially for the AR team, and there, I would say Salesforce also has it, and Oracle also has it too, or Oracle at the independent level. But I think, how do you handle it?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think it's just, so I'd say two things. It's one, deep respect for the craft. Like we just love analysts and we respect the work, and we get that means we do. No, and it means that we get it. Like that comes with like disagreement, and we don't expect to. In fact, a lot of times an analyst is more valuable to us if they're candid and they are disagreeable and they're telling us what's wrong. That's more valuable to us than an analyst that just says yes all the time, right? So we don't shy away from the tough conversation. We embrace it. I also think it starts at the top, right? And anyone that spent time with Bill McDermott knows that he too sees the value in this community and values it. And that comes from the top down. And so it's such an awesome, frankly, gift he gives my team that he is so involved. Nick Sitson as well, hugely supportive of this.
Yes.
This community loves, like I tease him that like he's like, he's like, fill my calendar. Like he could talk to analysts all day. He just loves the intellectual pursuit. And we truly believe it makes us better. And which means we've got a big tent. We've got room for a lot of people, a lot of voices. We know we for sure don't know everything. I think the last thing I would say to culture, Paul, you talked about, and you've been such a great advisor to us, saying that we need to bring that culture forward more, show more of it. And with what we do with analysts and just generally in the market, because I agree with you, that we just have such a fantastic culture here at ServiceNow. One of the tenets of that is called hungry but humble. And that, I hope, comes through in how we work with the analyst community. We're absolutely hungry. We're going to get in there and fight for, and make sure things are accurate about us, make sure we're getting credit where we think we should, 100%. But it comes from a place of humility, because we know with the ambitions that we have to be, to continue to grow around the world, what got us here is not going to get us there. So the team from Bill on down is they're very open to conversations and to feedback, and frankly willing to change a lot of big things, make big bets, because they know, we've got so much more to do, so much more to learn. So it's a great environment. So much credit to Bill and Nick and the team. I think that's why it's so fun to work here.
So yeah, well, I remember when we were at Knowledge 2024,
Mm-hmm.
and I was walking with Christine somewhere. I can't remember where I was going, but I remember talking to her, and I was commenting on the fact that it's given how busy you have to be at a conference, especially because you've got a track that you have to handle yourself. It's not like,
Yeah.
You have the good thing with you guys is you have the cooperation, the serious cooperation of the executive team on that one.
Yes, we do.
Like you really do. I like to a
Yeah.
degree that is phenomenal, given, you'll have, I mean, Bill McDermott's always on the stage at least.
Absolutely.
Although I still regret the fact, I mean, I never have had to sit down with a guy. But
Well, maybe we can make that happen, Paul. But yeah, he's great. Like I
it
get
would be my goodbye sit down, given I'm retiring pretty much right. But I mean, I wouldn't mind someday. But he's always on the stage. Nick, of course, is, to your point earlier, is everywhere, right? I mean, he is with analysts. He'll go and just, if he has free time, he'll just go hang out with analysts and have at a bar if he can, right?
absolutely.
But it's also the same for your team. Even though none of you really have free time, you kind of make the time to just hang out, right? Which I can't tell you how much it's appreciated by not just me, but the analysts overall, because you're willing to just, relax with them, not just treat them as a business object, right? So, right. And that's a big deal. So how do you, well, I guess question one is, how do you find the time at all to do that at a conference like that? And how do you make the time? And B, on a, well, I'll get to the second question. It could probably be the closing question because it'll take you a little time. Right after this.
So how do we make the time? I would say we actually do purposely build in time. So, we have like dinners and receptions and things. And the team is very thoughtful about making sure they're getting around to everybody. Like when I was there, I wanted to make sure that I had a personal conversation with every analyst that attended. Like you all took your time. You made a big commitment to be there. It's Vegas. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Like I want to make sure that I've said thank you, frankly, right? And we're hosting. Like it's we're there to spend time together, right? And while my team also, of course, wants to spend time with each other because they don't get to see each other very often either, we also make time for that separately, right? So I also think it's like hiring a great team. Like I don't have to go tell them, like, you should spend time with the analysts, or that they want it, they love it, right? Like they're like so excited. And Christine is such a great example, right? Like she was probably like running down the hallway, like going here and there and everywhere. And she's full of excitement. And did you hear Paul on the stage this? And where are you going next? And do you know how to get there? And, so it's like a genuine love of the moment and being together. And, it's just the right thing to do too, right? As my mother in Ohio would be really mad at me if I wasn't being a good hostess, Paul. So like there's a part of that that's in my ear for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, she's got to be really happy with you since you're a great hostess, besides being a great head of AR. And by the way, Christine, I adore her. I've known her forever, and I just love her to pieces because what a great person.
For sure.
So, all right, this is one final question. All right, so you have a pretty large team. Okay. It's not the largest, but it's large. It's probably in the middle to larger size team. If I'm looking at numbers, I'm guessing Salesforce is probably the largest. I'm just guessing, but you guys are probably somewhere just below that. But as things grow and as you grow,
Yeah.
It's always a question of headcount, right? And I will tell you this: I don't know if it's like this at ServiceNow, and you can certainly tell me yes or no. It's hard to get headcount for AR, just generally. I mean, it's not just one company; it's every company.
For
It's
sure.
hard to get headcount, especially at the level that whatever you might be looking. Because the problem is in your case, I think it's rare that you can look for junior analyst AR people. You've got to have pretty much people with serious experience, because at the level of senior manager or even director, senior director, because you're dealing with a very accomplished long-term body of analysts. And to be honest, there aren't a lot of rookie analysts either, right?
No, they're not.
No, which is actually a problem, but to be addressed on another show sometime. The problem with why there are no rookie analysts out there. I mean, there are a few, but
Right.
varying quality, let's just say.
Right.
So how do you deal with when you new area or bigger company? Let's just say bigger company,
Yeah.
and you are at the limit of what the amount your people can do. What do you do?
It's really interesting to be honest, Paul. Like we've tried to hire in more junior people, and to your point, like it does they don't really exist. Like there's not a lot of people in the market that have like just a couple of years of AR. It feels like, and like when you're looking for somebody, you need somebody that's got like 10 plus years, and if not in AR, like product experience, marketing experience, that have that business acumen, right, and ability to engage with an expert. So it is tough. And to your point, as we're growing so fast, I usually don't need somebody to take over like a little bit of thing. I'm like, we have this giant thing we decided to do, and I need you to go in and like take it on. So we've done a couple of things. We have been able to, through like people like Nick's support, grow the business with headcounts at more senior levels, like senior manager type level, and try to put them in with like a pretty big remit. Like my team will tell you, all of them have a lot of autonomy, some pretty big scope. But we've also been able to take advantage of ServiceNow has a co-op program. So we've had 3 co-ops. We've hired 2 out of the 3 of them that are now part of our teams, completely first job out of college. And it's been really awesome. Like, and we had a premise that we didn't want them coming in just doing like operational work. Like we're not hiring them to be project managers. We want to build AR leaders. So one of our goals was within the first year, they need to start being able to lead their own conversation with an analyst. So we've been really thoughtful about like what topics do we put them on? How does it align with some of their background? How do they shadow people? We took them through some rigorous training. And I think it's for sure like something that we want to continue doing more of. And we're going to start to sort of grow our own, if you will. They just bring such a great perspective and really hard workers. So it's been a lot of fun teaching old crusty people like me what to do. So I love it.
I think I described it crusty.
No.
or old by
thank you. Well, thank you. I'm starting to get past that page. We are also looking at like, how is AI going to help us? We actually had a really fascinating conversation earlier this week about like, should we be using the ServiceNow platform to build like an analyst agent where an analyst has a question, they could go to a portal and ask it curated information from ServiceNow. Certainly you could do that in Chat GPT and you're going to get what the internet thinks, right? Which is a valid perspective. But then to be able to combine that with, well, here's what we think the official, our official position is. So analysts can, I don't necessarily like self-serve because that's not really the intent. The intent is like, how can we go faster and get them information faster in the moment that they need it versus like, I have a question, let's schedule an inquiry. Let's, all these different things. So we're also looking at technology and how can we be better consumers in our own professional to take advantage of some of those productivity tools.
So, well, Elissa, thank you. I have about 8 million other questions, but
we have to have lunch again, Paul. We'll do it.
All right. You're on. I'm holding you to that. Okay.
Please
be prepared. I'll be sending you a note.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Elissa. Big hug.
And to you.
I will see you at lunch not too long from now. And of course, be prepared to come back on the show.
Anytime. It was great. Thank you so much, Paul. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Awesome. I see. That last answer has me thinking about 500,000 other things as a result, that especially the AI interface. And I was thinking about, well, Copilot talks analysis. I mean, I'm sure there are things you can work through there. And then the other thing I'll mention before I introduce our next guest is there's this app I was reading about in Wired magazine called it's not fully baked yet, but called Rebinder. And you can communicate with the great book you can communicate with an expert interactively with the great book you're reading, like Of Pride and Prejudice or something by Heidegger. Well, nothing by Heidegger is great philosophy, but let's just say, for the sake of it, a difficult book, and you can actually interact with somebody conversationally via AI but at the same time with their real, at least deep fake voice. They're hired to do it. So it's, relatively famous people, Margaret Atwood, those kind of people. And you can communicate with ideas of the book. And it's started thinking, well, why not be able to do that at the level of the AR rookie with an AR expert in conversation at all times. Anyway, we are going to, for this next guest, we're going to get a combination of old-timey, in the moment, and future think, right? And this is literally all three. We're going to be talking about something as radio. And, usually on this show, but on other shows, we're pretty much talking about enterprise tech. If we're talking media, it tends to be more live streams like this show is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we are today going to be talking to probably a big time expert in radio. Now, I got to tell you the story how I met this guy. He's a diehard Yankees fan. I'm a diehard Yankees fan. And he administers a Yankees group on Facebook, which I joined and started communicating. And I have another friend whose name is actually David Landsman. Our guest name is Dean Landsman. Okay. And when I first saw it, I didn't connect right. And I thought, what's David? He's a Phillies fan. Why is he doing? What's he got to do with the Yankees? And then I said, wait, this is Dean. And then I started seeing Dean Landsman's name show up with people I know in the enterprise tech world somehow, like Doc Searles, people like that. And then, so I don't remember, it might have been almost mutually we reached out. I don't remember who reached out first, but it led to basically what I would have to say is just a fast, real friendship, right? And I found out in the course of meeting this wonderful guy that he has an immense background in radio, not just a consultant and analyst, but a station owner, a DJ, meaning on the radio, a DJ, not spinning a record in a club, right? He's pretty close to my age. He's younger, but he's had a rich history, and he has he's a New Yorker. So as I said earlier, we have opinions, whether you like it or not, we're going to tell you. So we like it. So I want to bring on this amazing person, and Dean Landsman, welcome, sir.
Thank you. And thank you for that introduction. The only thing I wish is that you had said it in order. I was a disc jockey first, and then everything else came.
Okay. Well, fair enough. I wasn't no particular order. I could have done it alphabetically. I don't know, maybe. Although that would have been disc jockey analyst would have been first. Right. So let's
consultant came after.
Yeah. Right. Analyst, consultant, disc jockey, station owner. Yeah, there it is. Station owner would have been last. So let's talk radio. First, why should anyone even consider radio right now? And I mean, people's image of radio is they watch World War II movies with people listening to Franklin Roosevelt on that old I forget what they call those radios, but I think you probably have it in your collection.
Cathedral model, Philco floor model radios, or
That one. They're listening on the Philco 4 mile radio
Yeah.
to Roosevelt saying a day of infamy, right? So, but radio obviously is important and retains its importance. So why radio?
Well, I can answer that a number of ways. Funny thing is, I have a whole thing here of about radio, why radio, how radio, the path of radio from the beginning to now and where it should be going. Well, why radio? People still listen to the radio. Radio takes a lot of abuse, largely because of the advertising world, because advertising has not completely dried up, but dried up considerably for radio. Radio was always the cheapest way to buy advertising. Why? I've never been able to appreciate, because it's very effective. And there's lots of studies right now that audio is incredibly powerful, more so arguably than other ways, because everything is so fleeting now. You say, well, I'm going to advertise on such and such show, the Today Show. People don't spend the time they used to, but radio tends to be on, and it's often on in the background, which a lot of radio people could never tolerate. What do you mean background? They're listening, and it's on in the background, which made me very unpopular, by the way. I'd say, they're not listening to you, they're listening to the station, and the station's on. It makes disc jockeys very unhappy. But radio's on, and you go to offices, they'll have the radio on. Now, the radio may actually be Sirius XM, which is satellite radio, but the radio's on. Podcasts are not on because podcasts are short, but podcasts are a very real thing, which you can get to in a moment. But radio is there. Also, it's only in the past 2 years that discovery of new music has gone from radio to streaming, which is Spotify mostly. But radio is important. Now, things are changing in that regard, because Gen Z, the newest of the gens.
Yeah, another one, but
Gen Alpha, I think.
Yeah, that's Gen A.
Okay, they don't know from radio.
They're beta right now, so it's probably Gen Z you're talking about.
So they don't know from radio, and that's an issue. But they will know from radio when there's an emergency, because their parents, when there's no power and there's no internet because they don't have electricity, will break out that radio and tune to whatever they can find, which will be a news station or a talk station that's doing news, or a music station that's thinking, how the hell do we do this, but we're on the air? And they'll figure it out, which is what radio people do. You figure it out. And they'll get their news through a radio station, because radio is on the air, like all these things you see behind me, they come to you through the air. They don't come to you through some electronic thing. You may have to plug this, the ones behind me have to plug in, but lots of radios don't need electricity, they need a battery. And so there's a place for radio. Now, radio has largely morphed, not 100%, but largely much more than ever before, to talk and religion. People used to say, religious, what's that? Religious radio has always made a boatload of money. People would always scoff at it. I actually advised the client to go religious, and she looked at me and she said, are you crazy? I said, no. There's no room for anything with your station in this market but to go religious. She said, why? I said, because all the formats are taken. You don't have the budget to beat any of them. You'll be second or third in billing, which is nothing. Go religious. You'll make a lot of money. She didn't. She went country. She failed. She sold the station. So where's radio going? It's finding itself.
Before we get there.
Okay.
So I listen to radio. I'm a Sirius XM subscriber and have been from the very beginning, when it was still XM, when I started with XM, not Sirius, before they merged. I go to sleep listening to WFAN radio in New York through Odyssey, but basically through Alexa, right?
Right.
Who just is going to respond if I don't. Yeah, she tried. So, and interestingly enough, I remember when XM was created, they absolutely advertise it as radio without commercials. Now, SiriusXM has about 5 minutes of commercials for every 2 minutes of radio, right? And it's dozens and dozens and dozens of stations. It's seasonal. It's specific pop-up. It's all kinds of things. And guess what? I don't know what their revenues are, but I do know that an enormous number of people listen to it and tolerate the advertising. WFAN, I listen to the ads, right? What's the ads? NetSuite advertises on WFAN. So does, though, whatever local ads from different regions who are listening to it over the larger national or international bandwidth, right?
Mhm.
So I'm listening through the internet on WFAN because I can't get it any other way. But I'm hearing ads for this area, right, in DC Metro. When I did a VPN with Dallas, I heard ads for Dallas, right? So, I mean, so there is advertising, and a lot of people, and I'm hearing it all the time. And I think SiriusXM subscribers are paying a fair amount of money a year for that privilege of listening to a lot of ads.
Mhm.
Why? Why are they willing?
Because of the programming. And there's another point I make about what Sirius does, which is part of the change going on in radio, which I can get to. Let's say you listen to Mad Dog, the sports guy on Sirius, or say you listen to Howard Stern,
I don't know.
and Mad Dog had Joe Torre on, and you thought, didn't Joe Torre say this or that about Billy Martin, or this or that about Miguel Cabrera? Then you're thinking, wait a second, what did he say about Cabrera? You can go and find that and listen to it again. You can select that. Everything is stored. Or you can just keep listening to whatever you're listening to. Howard Stern had Hall of And Oates with his new band. And they sang Kisses on Your Lips. And it was amazing. It was really good. You want to hear that again? You can just select it. Now, tons of Howard's interviews are over and over and over listened to again and again and again by SiriusXM people, listeners, subscribers. Why? Because it's there. It's there for the taking. Now, I don't know if you want me to get into this now or not. Broadcast radio must morph to that. Radio morphs. Radio used to be something very different.
Okay, before you go there, then
Okay.
let's set the stage. We obviously know, look, I mean, our broadcasts, all of the ones that we do with Brent and I do with PPN, which is, which is streamed or occasionally recorded and shown. The clips are what are going to get the live stream depends on who can possibly be on at the time it's on, which is not always going to be a lot of people. The clips, however, to your point, are always there. And when we do the clips, every show we do, with occasional exceptions, gets thousands and thousands of views, right? The shows themselves don't have tons of things going on. Some do, but it's dependent on all kinds of things. But the clips, to your point, are huge. Now, that said, we're dealing with an era where when I went to Northwestern, I went to the School of Journalism and I took editorial to be a sports writer. Now it's the School of Interactive Media. It's no longer the School of Journalism. Okay, so, and everything they do is geared to interactive media. I personally see radio as part of interactive media.
Absolutely.
So can you elaborate from your analyst hat on both that, number one, the concept, the idea, where radio has to go, and then number two, well, I'll get to number two afterward.
Okay. Radio must morph into part of an integrated digital strategy where it's not just radio, it's a package, because it can't stand alone. Most media can't stand alone at all. Look at the news the news channels on cable. You've got CNN and MSNBC. They're the largest ones. I won't go into the smaller ones. MSNBC is now doing live events. Their first big live event is happening in September. They have a website. They have blogs. They have pieces. We'll call them all pieces, elements in an integrated digital strategy. CNN is actually producing programs, even some dramatic programs. It's the news, but they have it in a dramatic format. It's an integrated strategy where they do many things, and you can get CNN in many different ways on the web. So radio needs to be a part of that and needs to be selectable, as I said about Sirius FM. One thing that radio has going for it in many cases, and I don't need to go into it, although I've written about this in the past, about the morning show. The morning show used to be the most important part of any radio station, with the exception of news and talk stations where you had blubberheads like Rush Limbaugh, who were the most important part of the station. But morning was important. Morning shows were entertaining. They were informative. They set the tone for the day. They also set the tone for the radio station. But you need to have this thing that identifies what it is, and then these pieces that need to be available. Radio stations need to start making those available as digital pieces to be had, and digital pieces that support the integrated strategy of whatever that whole concept is. And what we don't have so much anymore, I mean, I'll give you a New York example. You used to have WABC New York, WPLJ New York, WABC TV. Well, if we still had that, you could have ABC, PLJ, and ABC TV with a website, and frankly, with other things that would support that, other events that would support that. This is where these things are going. Events on air, that air in different air meaning different things, and supported by, it's visual, it's what you read, it's all these things. And these can be ad supported. These can also be interactive because people will interact. People will, they comment on the web, they will participate in things. And, you know, the web is visual, the web is participatory. And, you know, radio would have call-in, radio would have people, you know, what's the word of the day? And if you're the fifth caller with the word of the day, you win $1,000. I mean, these kind of promotions. All of this can become integrated, and integration is critical, and it's understanding about that. And if you will allow me to be negative for a moment, please, about radio, which is so dear to me. Radio management was incredibly short-sighted 20, 25 years ago. I was trying to convince a client for whom I had made millions upon millions of dollars that he needed a website. And he said, website? What the hell is that? I said, no, you heard about the internet? Because, in other words, he sort of vaguely knew about it. I said, we need that because our listeners are going to be going to that, and we need a presence there. I said, no, seriously, please. You know, I mean, I brought you contests you didn't want to do. I brought you this you didn't want to do. You've argued with me about music, and I'm telling you, just trust me on the music. We need a website. Well, tell me about it. So I gave him a little bit about it. And he said, you're going to make that for us? I said, no, I'm not the guy who makes that for us. We need someone to build it and then someone to take care of it. He goes nuts. He said, you mean I have to hire another engineer? How are we making money on it? You tell me how we're making money on it. I said, no, we're not going to make money on it. It's value added. Our advertisers can have a presence there. We can have, I forget the term, we can have more for the advertiser there. We can supplement, that's a word. We can supplement their advertising with us on the web. He was saying, no, I have to hire a new engineer. I'm not getting money back. There's no return. And he's hung up on me. And I've made this man millions upon millions of dollars. And he's hanging up on me because he's scared he's not going to make any money because he's got to hire an engineer. Now, one of the problems with this is that he was a salesman and a very good salesman. He was promoted to general manager. It's a fallacy that a good salesperson is a good manager. Now, this happened over and over and over throughout the business. And just as the internet was popping, Wall Street discovered radio. And all these little groups got funded by, all these, economic, called money firms. And they went public and they did IPOs and they borrowed way too much money and couldn't do the debt service. And now we have just a few radio companies and entrepreneurs like myself. I bought a radio station. We did well. We tripled the billing. We got the highest ratings in the history of the market. We sold it for quite a profit. But then it was really hard for us to get another radio station or buy a bunch more, which was our plan, because these giants were buying everything. And what was left was slim pickings. And I didn't want slim pickings. You can't win with slim pickings. So the radio, it's kind of it broke itself. And it was just a very bad thing. That was the short version, by the way. Now, what I want to say, now that I've given you the negative, and I could also tell you how radio programming these days is shooting itself in the foot, but that's for another time. Radio is always changing. Now,
what's it look like now that's different than, say, 10 years ago even?
Okay. Formats have changed. Radio has to be more things than it used to be. Here's a good example. I talked about the Today Show. The Today Show forced a change in radio and Good Morning America. It used to be people listen to the morning show to get the news, the weather, the traffic, and whatever the entertainment was from the morning show. And I kept telling my clients, we need to do more than just, our usual morning show content. We need to be much more to them, because they can get all that either on the crawl or on the cutaways on morning TV. People are watching TV in the morning. Morning TV has become a competitor. I had a hard time convincing my radio clients that was the truth, because they didn't do that, because they were such diehard radio people. Well, now radio competes head on with TV, which is why the integrated strategy is so important, which is why radio has to be part of TV and TV has to be part of radio. So what you're seeing is a slow morph in that direction. We're also seeing that where there used to be 2 or 3 radio stations in a format in many markets, now you have one. There's one top 40 station. There's one album rock station. There's one talk station. I mean, here in New York, we have WFAN, and then there's the ESPN radio station, which nobody listens to. It's nothing, but ESPN keeps it because it clears their spots in New York. And that's an important thing, clearing the commercials.
Okay, so one final question, and tell a story about, a quick story about a recent or a real successful transition to the world of interactive media by let's call it what was a traditional radio station. What did it do? Might not be easy, but might not be any. I mean, that's a possibility too.
You need to give that some thought.
Something you think has done, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to have done something that says, okay, we've been around, I'm inventing time frame here, 50 years, or 70 years, or 80 years, or whatever. But we figured it out where we got to be, and we're on the way.
All right. There are many stations using their websites as a key part of what they are. They say, blah, 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 and there's more on our website. Go to, www or kkkk.com, and it's there. And they'll say, comment on it, or sign up there. And they'll talk about, Paul Greenberg on our site said, and Paul, if you're listening, call our number now and you get $1,000 or something like that. Right. But they'll mention you. I mean, you and I grew up in New York. WMCA used to say, Paul Greenberg sent in a postcard, and Paul, if you call within 7 minutes, you can get a WMCA Good Guy sweatshirt, which, by the way, I have one. Actually, I had two. A girlfriend stole one of my two. But I'm like, so I only have one. The girlfriend stole
that ex-girlfriend is a result, of course.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, but stations are doing that. And that's a very good step forward. Now, some stations, wise radio stations, there's a fellow named Steve Goldstein, who was a leader in this, started podcasting. And Steve got into podcasting very quickly. Steve was a national program director, VP programming for the stage broadcasting. Has done very well leading the charge there. And there's a fellow, Pierre Bouvard, who you can find on LinkedIn, who writes very well about radio. And he's I forget his title, at Cumulus Broadcasting. He talks about how audio is so important. And he talks about how to use just audio and how audio is critical. Now, mind you, he's working for a radio company, but he's talking about audio elements, and they own some syndicated programming as well. There is movement in that direction. Odyssey, which is a horrible company that's falling apart, even though they own WFAN, one of their few really good stations that's making money, they're falling apart. The stock exchange delisted them. Yeah, they're in bankruptcy. It's very sad. They bought CBS and proceeded to kill it. It's a very sad story. Frankly, I'd like to program a bunch of their stations and bring them back to health. I lost my train of thought by talking about that.
Right.
Shame on me.
All right, no problem. Listen, we're out of time, but we're gonna definitely follow this up. Probably early next year sometime. Be prepared. Okay. This is a monthly show, so it's not like there's a lot of them. So be ready sometime early next year to continue this, because I'm personally fascinated, and where you think it. I think what we'll do on the next part of this will be to cover the present and future, where it's going in more detail, because I think at this point it's time for strategies to incorporate radio, but I think there's a lot of people who don't understand radio yet. So they, again, to your point, everyone's listening to it, but also to your point, they're listening to the station, not the individual. So it's ambient to a large extent, right? And so the idea is, okay, how do you take that ambience and turn it into solidity, so to speak? And with that, thank you, Dean. Thank you. And
happy to do so.
And
I have to add to your introduction. Any number of people through the years have assumed you and I knew each other. Someone would say to me, "Oh, I saw Paul Greenberg yesterday or last week." I'll say, "Who?" Say, you don't know him? I'd say, people always ask me that.
Well, as soon as I signed up for the Yankees group, and thus we were connected, your name just started popping up everywhere in places that I had no idea you were in. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing it. I'm saying, wait, he knows him. 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 Kept going on and on and on. That we need to talk, definitely.
We share many good friends, yes.
Yeah, and plus, honestly, you're one of the. I mean, nothing against most of our Yankee fan brethren, but you're one of the more rational members of the Yankee fan community, right? Which I appeal to me a great deal. You actually have reason in your thinking as opposed to fanatical lunacy, right? So, with that, thank you, mwah. And I will see you. I'll see you probably this afternoon.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Bye, Dean.
So
that was a great show. And so next month, which is September, there will be a show. Well, I'll see you in a month. We'll just look at it that way. And with that, let me take you out. So long.
Mashed up, bashed up, and broken into two. I didn't know I was pretty till I took a look at you, and I'm rolling. Yeah, I'm still rolling. Baby, there ain't nothing I can lose, and I sure got the blues. I'm rolling. Hey!
This has been a Players Productions Network digital broadcast.